I wasn't born with a silver spoon. In fact, I didn't even have a clean plate. My earliest memory is watching my mother stretch $5 into 3 meals. We lived in a rust-bitten trailer on the edge of East Houston. No running water some weeks, and the power flickered like it was afraid of staying on too long. By the time I turned 10, I'd already made peace with the fact that life wasn't fair. But I also knew something else. No one was coming to save me. If I wanted out, I had to build my own ladder. At 14, I took my first job at an auto body shop. It didn't pay much, but I wasn't there for the money. I wanted to learn. Engines fascinated me. I loved breaking things down just to put them back together better. My hands were calloused by summer's end, but I never felt more alive. That shop became my classroom, and grease-stained manuals were my textbooks. School was a blur. I wasn't the smartest kid in the room, but I was the most determined. I'd wake up at 5, work a few hours before class, then do homework on my lunch break. Every Friday, I'd set aside a few crumpled bills to buy used books from garage sales, business, technology, psychology, anything that made me think differently. The turning point came when I stumbled upon a beat-up copy of Made in America by Sam Walton. Something about his story, a man with vision, grit, and zero pretense, sparked something in me. I read it cover to cover in one night, under the glow of a dollar store desk lamp. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just hungry for money. I was hungry for creation. College? Out of reach. I didn't have the grades, the cash, or the safety net. So, I created my own curriculum. Taught myself coding from a borrowed laptop at the public library. Learned business strategy from forums and pirated PDFs. And when I wasn't studying, I was sleeping on a cot behind the auto shop, dreaming of something no one else could see yet. Then came the crash. A drunk driver T-boned me on my way home. Shattered collarbone. Hospital bills I couldn't pay.
Job gone.
Car totaled. I lay in bed, staring at a cracked ceiling, wondering if this was it. If all my effort had been for nothing. But rock bottom doesn't break everyone. Sometimes it builds them. While my body healed, my mind went into overdrive. I started sketching an idea I'd had for months, a simple software tool to help mechanics manage orders, inventory, and customer history. Most of them still used pen and paper, some barely had email. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. It was useful. It was mine. I called it TorqueCloud, a name no one else believed in at the time. But I knew. This was the beginning. I still remember the first pitch. It was in a rundown garage outside San Antonio. I stood there, wearing my only decent shirt, hands trembling slightly as I opened my laptop. I showed the owner a crude prototype of TorqueCloud, explaining how it could replace his whiteboard, his cluttered receipts, and his endless guesswork. He grunted, scratched his head, and said, "I've been doing it my way for 30 years. And just like that, rejected. I didn't give up. Over the next 3 months, I visited 43 shops across Texas, slept in my car, ate cold ramen, got turned away again and again. Some didn't even let me finish my sentence. They saw a kid with no degree and no business card. Just another dreamer chasing smoke. Then garage number 44 changed everything. It was a small, independent shop in Austin. The owner, Miguel, wasn't much older than me. He looked over the app and said, "If it helps me stop drowning in paperwork, I'll give it a shot. Just don't charge me yet." That yes was worth more than gold. I worked around the clock to customize TorqueCloud to fit his workflow. I learned his business inside out, how he tracked parts, which services brought the highest margins, what clients complained about. I iterated fast. I fixed bugs before he found them. I made it better every single day. 2 months in, Miguel said something I'll never forget. "I can finally go home at 6. That line hit me harder than any investment pitch. I wasn't just building software. I was giving people their lives back. He filmed a short testimonial video for me, completely unprompted. I uploaded it to a Facebook group for independent mechanics. That video led to 10 more clients. Then 20. Then 50. I was still broke, but now I was usefully broke. To keep things going, I sold my car for $2,100. I rented a tiny shared office, bought a second monitor, and used the rest for server fees. I couch surfed with friends, ate peanut butter out of the jar, skipped birthdays, holidays, and weekends. My world shrank to one goal: make this thing work. I pitched to angel investors, hoping someone would see the potential. One told me, "You don't look like a CEO." Another said, "You should let someone more experienced run it." That one hurt, but I stopped seeking validation from people who had no stake in my outcome. I turned my energy toward the people who did: the mechanics, the shop owners, the blue-collar pros tired of being ignored by tech. Torque Cloud grew organically. I didn't need an ad budget. Word of mouth became my fuel. 3 years in, we had over 900 paying clients across the Midwest and Southern US. That's when the big check finally came. A small VC firm in Dallas believed in us. $600,000 in seed funding. It felt surreal. I signed the papers with blistered hands and tear-filled eyes. But I didn't take a vacation. I didn't buy anything flashy. I hired 3 people, upgraded the servers, and went right back to work. Because I knew the truth now. This wasn't the peak. It was only the first summit. I wasn't looking for love. Honestly, I didn't think I had space for it. My days were code, clients, and chaos, and my nights weren't much different. Romance, to me, felt like a luxury for people with stable lives. Mine was anything but. But then came Colorado. I'd flown out to demo Torque Cloud to a garage chain near Denver. It was one of those high-altitude meetings where your ears pop before you reach the office. I was mid-pitch, halfway through my workflow automation slide, when she walked in. Her name was Emily. She wasn't flashy or loud. She had this quiet confidence, like she didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I thought she was a manager, or maybe someone from finance. But within minutes, she started asking questions only someone deeply technical would ask. Turns out she was their lead systems analyst. MIT grad. Spoke 3 languages. And yet here she was, working on infrastructure for a regional auto shop brand. She believed in real impact, not Silicon Valley buzzwords. That alone made her rare. Over coffee, we debated UX design philosophy. Later, we argued about microservices versus monoliths. She called my API documentation surprisingly decent, which for a software engineer is basically a love letter. I never told her who I really was. Not right away. See, I had started introducing myself simply as one of the original developers. No CEO title. No mention of equity. No hint that I owned 80% of the company. It wasn't a lie. It was just strategic honesty. I didn't want her to be impressed by my story. I wanted her to be drawn to my substance. We kept in touch. Texts turned into phone calls. Calls turned into weekend visits. I'd fly out using budget airlines, rent tiny rooms just to spend a day and a half with her. We'd hike, cook simple meals, stay up late talking about everything from algorithms to grief. With her, I didn't feel like a founder. I felt like a man, flawed, ambitious, curious, and, for the first time in years, seen. But a storm brewed inside me. Torque Cloud had hit an inflection point. We were onboarding 100 clients a month. I had acquisition offers stacking up. One of them was from a Fortune 500 company, a clean exit, a 9-figure buyout. My dream. My escape. My victory. And yet, I was afraid. Not of losing the deal. Of losing her. What if she saw the private jets, the media buzz, the Forbes profile, and something changed? What if she thought I had deceived her all along? So, I made a decision. I wouldn't tell her anything. Not yet. I wanted to be sure of us before I brought my wealth into it. Because I knew too well that money complicates everything. It brings out masks in people. And I couldn't bear to see one on her. So I waited. I listened. I loved her quietly. And somewhere in the middle of delayed flights, silent coding nights, and simple dinners in her tiny apartment, I realized I didn't just want her in my life. I needed her at the center of it. I had everything I'd ever dreamed of. Except certainty. Torque Cloud had officially been acquired. The ink dried on a deal worth $120 million. My stake? Life-changing. I didn't celebrate. I just sat still. Alone, in a furnished apartment that didn't feel like mine, looking at numbers on a screen that didn't change the man looking back in the mirror. For months, I'd lived two lives. In one, I was a newly minted multimillionaire with investors blowing up my inbox. In the other, I was just a guy building something with calloused hands, falling deeply in love with a woman who had no idea she was dating a future billionaire. I started imagining the moment I'd tell Emily. But every time I tried, I froze. Because deep down, I wasn't afraid she'd leave me because of who I was. I was terrified she'd stay for what I had. So I did something crazy. I disguised myself. No wigs, no fake names, no hidden cameras. Just the purest form of disguise there is, normalcy. I downgraded my car to a used Honda, moved into a small walk-up apartment in Boulder, told Emily TorqueCloud hadn't worked out, that I was regrouping on a new idea, bootstrapped and barely getting by. She didn't blink. She smiled and said, "Failure's part of the process. Tell me about the next thing." That broke me, in the best way. She didn't care about titles or logos. She cared about me. She cooked for us when money was tight. She brought over notebooks filled with ideas for my next big thing. When I offered to split bills, she told me, "You'll make it back. I believe in you." Those words meant more than any term sheet ever had. And still, I hesitated. I couldn't keep lying to her, but I also couldn't rush the truth. So I waited for the right moment. I planned something personal, something private. For our 2-year anniversary, I invited her on a trip to Idaho, far away from startup noise, venture capital, and the digital world. Just sky, trees, and us. We hiked deep into the Sawtooth Mountains. No signal, no distractions. Just a worn trail and a campsite under the stars. That night, by the fire, I handed her a small wooden box. Nothing flashy, just smooth oak and a leather hinge. Inside was a simple silver ring, no diamond, engraved with our initials. She opened it, smiled wide, and tears gathered in her eyes before I even spoke. "Yes," she whispered. She said yes to a man she believed was struggling. A man she thought was rebuilding. A man she loved not for what he had, but for who he was. My throat tightened. I couldn't hold the truth anymore. I said, "There's something I need to tell you." She looked up, eyes full of trust, heart wide open. And I finally let her see the whole picture. "I built TorqueCloud," I told her, my voice shaking. Emily stared at me, eyes fixed but unreadable. I took a breath, the cold mountain air stinging my lungs. I didn't lose the company. I sold it. A month ago. I didn't want to hide it. I just needed to know who I was to you before money got in the way. Silence stretched between us like a canyon. I watched every flicker of her expression, terrified I'd see betrayal, or worse, disappointment. But she just smiled. "I know," she said softly. I blinked. "What?" She pulled her knees to her chest and looked at me. Not angry, not surprised, just calm. "I Googled you. Months ago." My stomach dropped. "I saw your interviews. Your Forbes feature. The announcement of the acquisition. But I waited. Because I wanted you to tell me, not the internet." I sat there stunned, equal parts relieved and ashamed. She had known the whole time. All the modest dinners, the second-hand clothes, the long conversations about uncertainty. She had never called me out, never challenged the lie. She simply waited for me to trust her. "I didn't fall in love with a founder," she said, reaching for my hand. "I fell in love with you. The guy who eats burnt toast because he's too distracted writing code. The guy who listens when I ramble about system latency at 2 a.m. The guy who watched me cry over nothing and didn't try to fix it, just held me." Her words dismantled every wall I'd built. That night, under the stars, we started again. No secrets. No roles to play. Just two people, one who had built an empire and one who had seen through it to the soul beneath. Back home, I didn't go on a spending spree. No new mansion. No yacht. Instead, I built something new, something bigger than me. A venture studio focused on underdog founders. The kind of people I used to be. Kids in rural towns with big dreams and no connections. Single moms building prototypes at night. Immigrants coding from internet cafes. We called it Forge Capital. We didn't look for polished decks or Ivy League resumes. We looked for fire, the kind that comes from sleeping in your car for a dream no one else believes in. We offered not just funding, but mentorship, technical support, and community. Within 2 years, we had backed 48 startups across 5 countries. One built a platform for remote education in refugee camps. Another developed portable solar grids for villages in northern Kenya. Not all succeeded, but every one of them mattered. My net worth crossed $1 billion quietly, like it was just another number in a spreadsheet. And honestly, it felt less important than our first user testimonial back in Austin. Emily and I got married in the forest where I proposed. No paparazzi. No headlines. Just family, friends, and the trees that bore witness to the truth. Together, we built a life rooted in impact, not image. Because real success isn't about being admired, it's about being understood and still being loved. People always ask me the same question. What's it like to be a billionaire? And the truth? It feels quiet. Not the kind of silence you hear in empty rooms, but the kind that lives inside when you've finally stopped chasing the wrong things. I used to believe success meant more money, more headlines, more influence. But standing on that mountain with Emily, holding a ring that costs less than a week's groceries, I realized the truth. Success isn't measured by what you own. It's measured by what you're willing to give. I disguised myself not because I was ashamed of my success, but because I needed to know who I was without it. Would people still respect me if I wasn't rich? Would she still love me if I wasn't powerful? That disguise taught me everything. It taught me humility, to sit quietly in a room full of assumptions and never once correct them. It taught me trust, that real love isn't about appearances, it's about presence. It taught me clarity, that when all the noise fades, the only thing that matters is who you became while no one was watching. If you're watching this right now and you're struggling, let me tell you something. The world will try to convince you that you're not enough until you're successful. And then it'll pretend it always believed in you. Ignore the noise. You don't need validation from people who only see value in dollar signs. You need 3 things. An unshakable reason. Mine was freedom for my family, for the kid I used to be, for the people who never got a fair shot. A willingness to lose. Not just money or time, but ego, comfort, and the illusion of control. A heart that won't harden. Even when you're betrayed, overlooked, underestimated, don't let bitterness win. Protect your soul, even as you build your empire. Because when you get there, when the money's in the account and the world knows your name, the real question won't be, how much did you earn? It will be, who did you become to get here? And did you lose anything worth more along the way? I'm a billionaire, but more importantly, I'm a builder, a partner, a son, a friend, a student of failure, a believer in second chances, and most of all, a man who once disguised himself, just to be sure his heart had found something real. And I did. Now it's your turn. Whatever you're building, chasing, or dreaming, start. Even if you're afraid. Especially if you're afraid. Disguise your success if you must. But never, ever hide your soul.